anybody can relate on the topic of wellness, right? We all deal with health challenges. We all deal with figuring out what to eat every day and managing our energy and managing stress and sleeping. So there's really no one who you can't have a conversation with and connect actually on those topics. If you're interested in talking about it, which not everyone is.
All right, before we get into today's episode of The Meaningful Revolution, I just wanted to take a quick moment to highlight our community because you guys are so fantastic. And I wanted to say that you can either leave a comment on Apple Podcasts or go to www.community.seanbutner.com to join our community to have your comment highlighted. I'm so glad I checked or clicked on this. It's a down-to-earth yet powerful podcast that promotes much needed inspiration in our lives from Cedar, Colorado. We love to highlight you guys here in the community. So please, again, leave a comment on Apple Podcasts if you enjoy this episode or any of the episodes. Community.seanbutner.com. Links below this episode so that you know. Hey everyone, welcome to the Meaningful Revolution podcast. I'm again your host, Sean Butner, certified high performance coach. Today I have my good friend, Carrie Petri, who is an attorney turned wellness coach who has a lot of experience working in finance and understanding the challenges of maintaining a really healthy lifestyle while balancing a hugely demanding job. So she's discovered holistic health and functional medicine as tools to transform her own well-being. And she's passionate about sharing those strategies to help others. So she has a private coaching practice for individuals and corporate clients to support integrating wellness in every area of their lives. She's also received her BA from Duke University and her law degree from Fordham Law School, and has coaching certifications from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, the Institute for Coaching Mastery also, and she's just recently completed her 200-hour Vinyasa Yoga teacher training. So with that, Carrie, so good to see you again. Welcome to the Meaningful Revolution.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So first off, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about, what are we going to really be focusing in on today?
In terms of like what I'm, my passion, what
Yes.
I'm passionate about. Yeah. So my passion is around wellness and holistic wellness. So the way that I think about wellness includes nutrition, fitness and movement, and also importantly, self-care and kind of your mental and emotional well-being and the practices that you have for maintaining that. And my passion for it, I would say, comes from the deep belief that when people take excellent care of their health on all those levels, it allows them to show up in the world as the best version of themselves and it enables them to reach their potential. And so that's why I'm so passionate about helping people achieve that.
Right on. So I know we talked a little bit in your intro that you had a lot of challenges managing your wellness with a high-powered job. Could you maybe explain a story or a turning point in your life when you realized, hey, I really need to figure out wellness for just living, I guess, I imagine?
Yeah, sure. So I was a lawyer before, obviously, and worked in banking, and kind of discovered this passion for wellness outside of work while I was in that career. And as I kind of continued, I started with nutrition, started learning about nutrition, and then fell down this rabbit hole of meditation and mindfulness, exercise, all the things. And I just kind of discovered this passion. And I discovered, as I started implementing these things in my own life, I saw the difference that it made for me. And at the same time, I really was starting to see how there was a huge discrepancy between, what I was learning in the world of wellness and what was actually being practiced by most people in the corporate environment. There was this huge split between, the practices that I knew helped people and helped me, and what was actually going on for most people in their workday. So that was as I started to see that, that was kind of a turning point for me. And what wound up happening was that I um, started looking for so I was like learning about nutrition, learning about all these things, reading all the books, like falling in love with this topic, and then wound up getting my first health coaching certification at Integrative Nutrition, and started to think about how I might move my life and my career a little bit more in that direction. And what wound up happening was that um, the bank that I was at didn't have any kind of a wellness program internally. And so I reached out to them and had to started on this path of building a corporate wellness program within the bank to kind of bring some of these practices to my coworkers and employees, not my employees, but the bank's employees, to help serve them in that. And fortunately, that grew into this wellness program that I was able to kind of build from scratch and test ideas out on, and see what helped people, what they responded to. Um, so that was for me a turning point, was kind of taking this passion and bringing it into what I was doing at the time.
I love the idea of, and I talk about a lot how sometimes our hobbies really can turn into our passions, you know? And like for me, I had a 15-year career in software. I actually went to business school, so I had no business, I have zero like computer science training, but was able to work at like Apple at the height of my career. Um, just because I was really passionate about computers. So I love that idea of getting passionate about it and then figuring out how to shift slowly into it. So, um, from that journey of bringing it to the bank, was there anything that maybe surprised you or created a unique opportunity for you in your career or life from doing that? I'm just a little curious about
Mm.
that.
Something that surprised me was like the resistance to it. Like like to me, it's a no brainer, right? And I think today, I mean, again, that was 4 or 5 years ago. I think today people are a lot more kind of versed in wellness. And in the last few years, especially, I think companies are beginning to really wake up to the fact that this is something that is not just like a fluffy, nice to have benefit for employees. It's something that it makes a huge difference if it's done well in the lives of employees. And that impacts retention and whether or not they stay with a company. It also impacts like their like wellness. Again, going back to what I was saying before, like wellness at its basic level impacts how you show up every day. Like when you're taking care of your health, you can show up with more energy. If you're managing your stress levels better, your performance is better. So what surprised me at the time was I started by going to the HR department where I was, and at the time there was no appetite for a wellness program.
Oh
Like,
wow.
and I would prepare these. My whole thing was like, you can build a wellness program with very little financial investment by leveraging the resources within the company,
Mm,
within the bank that you already have, and by leveraging like your insurance program and leveraging employees within the organization who are passionate about wellness and have skill sets outside of their 9 to 5. So that's where I started, was like, here's how we can do it for free. And eventually, so what surprised me was the resistance, but what the way around it that I found was by finding other champions within the organization and leaders who saw the value of wellness and saw it in their own lives, and coordinating with them to find an avenue to bring it to life. So yeah, that's what I would say.
oh, right on. So out of like, so it sounds like you were leveraging relationships inside your organization in order to make this big impact. Um, was it all people that you knew before, or was it people that you connected with as you're trying to build this?
That's a good question. It was both, I would say. Pretty much anyone who would talk to me about wellness, I would, you know, talk their ear off, and um, sort of to your point of like your hobby kind of coming into your life in other ways, and that crossing over. I mean, I just talked about wellness all the time. It was part of my identity and what I was
Mhm.
interested in and what I wanted to talk to people about. So I had a lot of conversations with people on my team, um, you know, people at other events within the organization, kind of around wellness, and I think that event eventually led me to crossing paths with the right people, who could help me, kind of spread the word more.
Okay. Awesome. I'm also wondering too, like, so I, from lawyers that I know, right, that's a very high, like, work-life balance is usually not their strong suit. you know, did you find that it was more appealing to people that were kind of at the edge of their performance, at the edge of the work that they did? And I imagine finance in certain areas too is also kind of that same way. Did that transfer over pretty easily? A bunch of questions in there, but
Yeah, no, you know, the interesting thing about wellness is like you can, at least for me, because I love talking about it, anybody can relate on the topic of wellness,
Mhm.
right? We all deal with health challenges. We all deal with figuring out what to eat every day and managing our energy and managing stress and sleeping. So there's really no one who you can't have a conversation with and connect actually on those topics. If you're interested in talking about it, which not everyone is. And so I would say there's, you know, there I related with different people in different ways. Certainly, I agree with you about lawyers and law firm culture, and I've seen that. Um, I've seen that to be a challenge for a lot of people, and it's not limited to the law, but it's a good example of it, where if a culture or and a workplace culture is not, it can be either conducive to good habits and to supporting people, and their
Mhm.
well-being, or it can be the opposite where, you know, there's more kind of pressure to perform that doesn't take into account necessarily, um, things like self-care and well-being. And so, the challenge, I guess, is finding ways to help people understand and see how these practices that may seem like nice to have, especially for people that are have been in the working world for a long time and have been part of kind of legacy cultures where
Mhm.
these things aren't valued as often or as much. Helping them to educating them to kind of show the benefits of some of these kind of practices and values. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Oh,
um,
totally, totally.
okay.
And I can relate having been in, like, seeing friends in startup culture. I think a lot. I worked at Walmart corporate for a while, a little bit more traditional corporation, and that whole. I mean, my whole career in coaching got started because I was burnt out, and you can't really sustain the long hours, the you know just ignoring your health and ignoring personal relationships to just do work. Like, we're social beings and we need to move. Like, those are two truths. And if you don't have one of those two, you can't be performant over the long term, as we talk about in high performance all the time. So that's, just want to point that out, that is
Yeah.
super super important. So
Yeah,
um
and burnout too, just to your point, is a huge thing right now.
mhm,
I hear from so many people and for so many different reasons that they feel burnt out and they feel, they're after the last couple of years, they're exhausted. Some people in their work environments right now are dealing with much larger workloads because of,
mhm,
things happening in hiring and people leaving. And so, um, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's 2 things there. There's one within an organization, the importance of leaders recognizing that these are
mhm.
real issues that people are dealing with, and they're affecting not only their home life, but they're affecting, their performance at work, which affects the company's, bottom line and everything else. But also, it's really, incumbent on individuals to take responsibility for their own health and well-being and to set boundaries and to keep them and like we have to be the first ones to prioritize our well-being and to prioritize self-care, however, whatever that means to you,
Mhm.
uh, because you can't always rely on an organization to do it for, to protect it for you.
Right. Have you noticed any common struggles or common, I guess, strategies to work around that? Because I've been there. I know I've had friends that have been like, I have to finish this project. It's, I've been going for 2 months too long. I'm doing every waking moment like is focused on this. When I go to sleep, I dream about work and like solve
Yeah.
problems. Like, um, how do you get out of that mode of survival, or how do you get out of that where it's like it's so stressful that have you heard of this term quiet quitting? I was reading about this earlier
No.
this week where people in jobs are like, I'm gonna put, I'm hired for 40 hours, I'm gonna work my 40 hours, I'm gonna go home, it's family time, and there's a very clear boundary there. And so it's a way the way that the article is phrasing it, it's a way for people to not go the extra mile outside of the parameters,
Mm,
which is actually kind of help. Like there's probably a lot to unpack there. And
yeah.
I think that it's good in some regards. I think as a high performance coach, it's also like it's a failure of organizations, it's a failure of people wanting to get really excellent at something. I think
Mhm.
when you really are inspired and love a topic, you talk about it all the time, like you said earlier. You are always working on it, thinking about it, and that is a good thing as long as you're not burning out by destroying relationships and your body. Um, so when I was going to, so with that in mind,
Yeah, I
I,
just to jump in because
yeah,
I hear the question in there, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's it can be it's a good problem to have, right? You love your
mhm,
work so much. Hopefully that's why I mean, for some people it's not that they love their work, they're just so stressed out with their work
yep,
and they have so many demands on them that that's why they can't stop working on it or stop thinking about it. Or alternatively, you love what you do so much and you're so inspired and passionate about what you're working on that you're tempted to you're tempted to overstep your own boundaries around health and well-being and to overextend yourself, whether it's
mhm,
at the demands of your job and within like the obligations of your job, or it's just within like you pushing yourself to perform or to keep going. um And it's so important. And that's where I guess it comes back to that element of kind of having personal responsibility over your health and your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health, all of it, because you the problem with it, if you're pushing your boundaries and pushing yourself and is you it's unsustainable.
mhm,
And so if your goals are, high performance in the long run and achievement in the long run, you're doing yourself a disservice by not proactively protecting your well-being now, because if you just give everything to work, right, and you don't keep
mhm,
those boundaries and you let sleep go and you let relationships go and you whether it's because again you're so stressed out about your work or you're so in love with your work, eventually those other things that are key components of your life and that support you and the wholeness of you are going to fade away, and when that
mhm,
happens you're not going to be able to sustain the work piece anyway. um
100%. As you know, in my coaching business, I know when I've dealt with people with burnout, like the last thing they want to hear is, "Hey, what you really need to do is add another ball to what you're juggling." But sometimes, especially for people that are high performers, that are striving and have that fire in their belly to really push, and we can talk about where we are now in society about that. But um, when you say, "Hey, you got to add that extra ball," it's just like I can't. Like but inevitably, when they start, like to go for more walks outside, to take a break during the day, that's just 10 minutes. It's 5 minutes. You know,
mhm.
the impact to just how they feel day to day is always surprising and always much bigger than they thought, and then that kind of gets them going. I'm not sure. Have you noticed something like that?
Yeah,
Or
100%.
okay.
I mean, that's what that is like at the heart of how I work with people
Mm,
is making it seamless. So instead of and I think some people think too when they think about, wellness or being healthy, they imagine, restrictive diets and intense workouts and, deep meditations that take, take up time out of their day. And so it can feel like, you know what, I don't have time to think about that right now. Um, and my whole thing is like, okay, how do we do this? It doesn't have to be these huge efforts. It's those small steps taken consistently that build those foundations. And it really can be as simple as taking a 10-minute walk, getting
Mm-hmm.
outside for 10 minutes or, um, and so I really like those little steps that you can kind of build in so that it's not quite as overwhelming for somebody who already has too much on their plate to begin with.
Right on. Yeah, I agree with that, 100%. So as you were building this program in your organization and creating your training that you now do and offer, um, were there any particular like huge struggles that came up for you or in the process where you're like, huh, like maybe stopped you in your tracks and you had to figure your way around it?
Funnily enough, when I first started doing both, actually, I was sort of doing three things at once. I had my job still as a lawyer at the bank. I was running the corporate wellness program at the bank, which had been kind of built into my job responsibilities at my request, but my other responsibilities hadn't shifted
Lesson.
down.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was trying to, get my additional training, my certifications, my training, learn about how to build a coaching business. So doing all three things at once. And I got super burned out, like to the point where I got sick. And I had wound up being mold toxicity that I was exposed to some
Mm,
mold in my environment. And I got super sick for I was sick for about 4 months. And then it took me another 4 to 6 months after that to recover.
wow.
Um, so that was super interesting to me at the I mean, it didn't feel interesting at the time. It felt like, "Oh my god, this is, like, the last thing I need right now." But in the long run, I learned so much about, I learned about burnout. I learned
Mhm.
that I can't let myself overstep my own boundaries, that I have to be vigilant about, um, you know, taking care of the whole picture of myself and my health because like, as I said before, it's just not sustainable to do otherwise. So it did wind up helping me in the long run, I think. For better or for worse. And I came to understand, I learned a lot about environmental toxins and,
Mhm.
fun stuff. But that was one struggle that kind of came up early on.
Right on. Did that accelerate you leaving your main gig, or was there a plan there? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to do it for I knew it was gonna happen at some point,
Hmm.
and what actually was the turning point for me was so we moved to work from home in 2020,
Hmm.
and this past spring, they were beginning to call everyone back to the office, and I kind of knew that to me was just, "Okay, if I'm ever gonna do this, this is the right time, I have all the training, it's like was time for me to make a leap." And I think too, probably similar to what a lot of people are thinking about and going through after the last couple of years has been, having that kind of huge break from normal routines and a
Hmm.
huge, this kind of like traumatic event in the sense of like having to process a version of reality that I don't think most of us ever expected to live through.
Yeah.
Um, you know, for me, that gave me a sense of urgency, I think, more about how I was spending my time.
Hmm.
Um, and so all those things kind of combined, it was time to make the leap.
Gotcha. Yeah, I noticed so I went full-time coaching in the middle of 2019, right before everything went sideways. And I noticed the people that I was working with, there was a shift of where it felt like so many people were just in like go, 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 go mode. Um, Never any time to like stop, take a breath, and reflect on like is what I'm doing day to day kind of crazy, you know? The 2.5 hour commute each way to work is gonna take a toll on you. And people like, you know, my whole identity was tied to my work. I was doing that 80 hours a week, and now that that's gone, like, where are my friends? Where are like all these type
Yeah.
of like your human. I like to say your humanity kind of caught up with you, and you're like, oh, I'm not a robot. in a lot of ways. And so
Yeah.
this great, I called it the great reflection doing that. And then I still believe that it's fundamentally changed how people think about what they want to do and how they work. Um, and so I want to honor you for following that inspiration because I know that that's not an easy thing to do, especially when times are not certain. I think there were people that were like, okay, things are super uncertain. I'm gonna like hunker down and just not try to change, try to control for as little change as possible. That's
Hmm.
how I was wanted to phrase
Hmm.
that. And there are people that are like, everything's upside down. Like, why not? you know. So um, that's super cool. I just want to honor that jump because
Thank
it's a
you.
big deal.
Thanks.
All right, so would guess for the next couple of questions I have for you, would you consider yourself like, do you work more individually or do you work more with corporate entities building wellness programs, or how do you view yourself? Because that'll.
Yeah, it's a mix right now. It's both. And I like the corporate piece because I have done it and I understand kind of the issues, that the employees face in terms of balancing, trying to build balance in. And so I very much relate to that environment. And I have done it, for a few years now. So it's something that I know. Um, I do love working with people one on one. That's like really
Mhm.
where my heart is at, to be totally honest with you.
Awesome.
There's just yeah, I just um there's something so special about the coaching relationship,
Hmm.
where somebody is like willing to open up about their life to you and you have this opportunity to hold space for their vision and for their dreams and to be the person who's cheering them on and helping them strategize is like to me, there's nothing better. Like I so that so I would say that's my favorite, but I am doing both, and I like
Okay,
both.
so then when you're looking for someone that's like a top tier in the wellness space, like what does that look like? What would you look for in someone? And then maybe we'll get into some influences that you've had in wellness.
You mean like who do I look up to as like a leader or what do I I'm not sure.
So okay, let me clarify. The first question is more of like if I had to find a wellness specialist for my business, or I'm looking to connect with someone as like a wellness coach, like what should I look for in someone that's like at the top of their game? We'll
Okay.
start there.
Okay. Yeah, great question. So think hmm, I think that it's important that to work with somebody that is not just looking at physical health, but looking at
Mm,
mental and emotional challenges as well. Again, I think the thing with wellness is that it touches every aspect of our life and it's impacted by so many factors within our life. And so you
mhm,
really need somebody who's looking at the whole picture with you. Whether that's if it's in a medical context, a doctor who has an understanding of, the lifestyle piece and how that works with things, or if it's a team, where the doctor's doing some parts, but you have whether it's a coach that's with the doctor or a team, so that somebody or everybody is looking at the whole picture. Um, and then, but just for individuals, like, I think my whole focus within my coaching is within a framework that I created that I call Eat, Move, and Breathe.
mm,
And so eat is like nutrition, healthy eating, healthy cooking, everything to do with your relationship with food, emotional eating, food cravings, all of that falls under eat. Move is fitness, exercise motivation, doing the right workouts for your that align with your goals, and also building in plenty of movement throughout the day outside of
mm,
workouts. So
mhm.
making sure you're counteracting kind of a sedentary lifestyle. And then breathe is like self. I don't. Did I already walk through this before? I don't know.
No, no, we haven't yet. So
I talk about this all the time. I'm not sure if I'm repeating myself. Breathe is like self care, stress management, the quality of your sleep, and your mental and emotional environment internally. And the reason that I think, and everything kind of falls under those 3, and the
Mhm.
reason I think looking at all 3 is so important is that you can't really have complete and whole well-being if any one of those areas is not addressed. And so, like, for example, you could be eating, like, the perfect diet for you, working out every day, but if your stress levels are off the charts and you're not managing your stress, you're not gonna be the healthiest
Mhm.
version of yourself. Um, so and additionally, any step that you take in one of those areas is gonna have positive impacts on the other.
Mhm.
So if you start eating well, you change your diet and start making better choices around food, you are gonna have more energy to show up to a workout, you know?
Yep.
And then the more you and when you're building in more exercise and more movement, it helps to process stress and release stress. And so that's how I see those 3 things working together. So in answer to your question, in terms of when you're looking to make a change or work with somebody around your health, I would look to make sure that, they're supporting you around all of those elements instead of, just focusing on food or just focusing on workouts. Because I really think you see progress, sustainable progress faster when you incorporate all 3 aspects.
I 100% agree with you on that. And like years ago, right when I was out of college, I was like super stressed with student loans and like financially I was just on like rice and beans, like that kind of like living like a college kid in your first part of your career, which is
Yeah.
always fun. And I was so stressed, like I signed up for the Chicago Marathon and
Yes.
like and I couldn't run for 15 minutes straight when I signed up, but I'm like, I need something that's cheap and something that I can do. And you know, trying to the amount of getting to the point where I could just think about like, oh, finance is just a math problem, really. And so, but you have a lot of emotions that might get caught up there, and like to just burn that off to be able to focus on like, okay, how do I cut? How do I, you know, add an extra couple bucks here? What do I do to kind of really, hit my student loan balance so that I could start to pay for, living expenses and not have to juggle bills, like, is super
Yes.
powerful.
So that clarity came out of your like, during your runs and out spending that time running?
Yes, after about mile 3, everything would just kind of like flush out, and I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, like I can, I felt like a human again, like, okay,
yeah,
that's burning out, and now to distract myself from the pain of running, let me try to like,
yeah,
figure out what I can, do. And so that was it. It fed into each other,
yeah, 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 I love movement for that. I think movement in any form is one of the most powerful things you can do for your
Mhm.
health, for exactly that reason. You're releasing stress, you're releasing, endorphins within the body, you're oxygenating the body, you're taking care of your body in a way that is immediately impacting your mental health.
Yep.
So it's super powerful. Did
Yeah.
you end up running the marathon?
I did. So that first year was the
Nice.
year when it was like it's like it's 6 o'clock. It started at 80 degrees, and they ended up canceling it because it got
Oh
like
gosh.
awfully hot, and they ran out of water for everyone that
That's
wasn't in the first quarter of the race. Like they
oh my goodness.
so then the
Disaster.
next year I went and finished. So I got
That's
60
great.
miles in before they called it, and that's a whole other crazy story of like people opening up like fire hydrants on Michigan Avenue so all the runners
Oh
could
my
like
gosh.
cool down and stuff. Yeah, it was nuts. Anyways, for another day, I can
Ah.
tell more stories about that. Excuse me. So, all right. So, looking at a someone who approaches it holistically, which I think is really important, and relates to the coaching work I do too, and the high performance research that we base that on. So, is there anything else to look out for other than that holistic approach?
In terms of looking to work with somebody?
Yeah. Yes. Let me finish my
Uh,
question.
I I would say, a big part of working with a coach is there's so much that come especially if it's over a period of time, right? If it's 3 months or 6 months, however long you're working with somebody, um, there's a lot first of all, you need somebody that you can deeply trust because you wanna be able to be as open and transparent with them as possible. Ideally, they become somebody that you can talk to about anything, because having that trust and that relationship within that container is part of what's powerful about working with a coach.
Hmm.
And I would say, having somebody that understands how to navigate mindset and emotional issues as well, because there's two pieces, right? There's the strategies around, what to eat, how to improve your diet, how to motivate for exercise, how to, improve your sleep, all those different kind of tangible pieces. But where the rubber hits the road is really around what comes up when you begin to make changes to your lifestyle and
Hmm.
begin to try to change your behavior, and all of the blocks that immediately come up, which are the reasons that you haven't done those things in the past, like, right? So for most people, when it comes to wellness, they have a general idea of what they should be doing, like,
Hmm.
they should be eating more vegetables, they should be drinking more water, and they should be moving their body and, turning off their phone at night. Like, most people know the things that they should be doing, and so the work is really around, to the extent that you haven't been doing it, those things, and as you
Hmm.
start to work with a coach and you have somebody holding you accountable, that comes much more into light. Then it's like unpacking what's really under the surface there, like what's really going on within your thoughts or within your emotions, or and maybe it's tied to things from the past, maybe it's tied to
Hmm.
fears about the future, that's keeping you from being in consistent action, and that's where having a coach who knows how to kind of navigate that with you is I
Hmm.
think also really important.
I can't agree with you more. Yeah, I had a client last year whose son had he's in kindergarten and had a sticker chart, and he was like, I just want to get back to consistent workouts. And he came up with the idea of using a sticker chart that he could place stickers with his son at home, and that was the weird thing that really worked for him and had the validation of the family kind of supporting him. And like, there's so
Yeah.
many good things that kind of rallied around that one strategy. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yes.
those weird psychological things you need to know about yourself in order
Yeah.
to follow through.
Yeah, and it's different for every person too,
Hmm.
like what motivates one person, it's sort of like with workouts, right? And actually, like, every aspect of wellness is completely unique to the individual, right? Like,
Hmm.
a diet that works for one person is gonna be like the best possible diet for one person is the worst possible diet for somebody else. And a workout that is like, you know, somebody's favorite and gets great results for them is gonna be the workout that somebody else can't motivate themselves to do. So my dog is snoring in the background. Um, and so I totally lost my train of thought. But oh yeah, so it's like discovering, um, for yourself around all those areas, but also psychologically, like what motivates me?
Hmm.
What triggers me? How do I, so
What's my plan when
great.
that happens? Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So okay, so all right, holistic approach. Having a model like your eat, move, breathe. Someone that you trust, and then navigating those mindsets and mental things that pop up in a way that helps you get into action. That's kind of like four things I'm picking up here. So okay, with that said, like, where did you find influence, or who do you follow that you think is really good in the field that other folks might want, if they're interested in this topic of wellness, might want to pick up or follow, other than
Yeah.
yourself, of course?
Yeah. So I think, so at my one of my coaching certifications that I did, it was the second one, the second health coaching one was through the Institute for Functional Medicine. And it's their coaching program, which is the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. But functional medicine, I think, is the most, I think it's a super interesting area of medicine. Functional medicine doctors are Western trained, like traditionally
Hmm.
medical school, medically trained doctors. And then they also do this additional curriculum on top of it around functional medicine. And the idea behind functional medicine is that it looks at the body, um, as a as a system, right? It looks at all of
Mm,
this, all of the different aspects and components of the body as interrelated. And so instead of being, whereas a lot of medicine is looks at, that treats a particular symptom or a particular part of the body, a particular area of the body. Functional medicine looks at the personal. And so, when, for example, when you
mm,
go to work with a functional medicine doctor for the first time, they very often will sit down with you and do a deep dive of, an hour to 90 minutes around your entire health history,
right.
um, you know, things that happened to you in childhood, your diet, your parents, and their medical history. And in addition to that, so they pair that kind of like deep dive around your health history with like cutting edge diagnostic tools around in terms of like blood work and looking at what's happening in your gut. And so it's this really beautiful combination of um, like cutting edge modern medicine and also looking at
Mm,
lifestyle choices and how that impacts things. So to me, it's like it's this um, again like very holistic view of medicine and of health. And so I really look up to functional medicine doctors. They're like a lot
okay.
of them are, like Mark Hyman is kind of a leader in the field, and um, my own functional medicine doctor's practice, Parsley
Hmm.
Health. They're fantastic. Will Cole is another functional medicine doctor who's
Okay.
pretty well known. Um, yeah, so I always encourage people to look at functional medicine practices. And
Okay.
like I work with, to the extent that I work with somebody and there's a medical issue that comes up or they need to work with a doctor, I'm constantly referring them
Oh,
either
right
to my
on.
doctor. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I imagine that getting into history, right? So there's the person in a system, and then there's the body as a system. So, you have a lot of like sore throats, but maybe it's a gut health thing. Like, it's not, you don't go to a throat doctor and then the throat doctor's like, yeah, I don't know. So, right. So
Yeah.
it's more like, oh, you have this gut thing that's impacting your throat and your sinus, your allergies. And so let's
Yeah, and
take care of
because they're
this.
looking at the whole picture, they're looking at your hormone levels, they're looking
Mm,
at what your diet is, what are you eating? They're looking at like they just they're able to take a bird's eye view of things. And when it really was valuable to me was when I got burned out and I was getting sick and I couldn't figure it out. It was my functional medicine doctor who asked me
mm,
about mold. She was like, and I would never in a million years have it would never have occurred to me these symptoms that I was having, which ranged from nausea to ocular migraines to dizziness to respiratory,
mhm,
like, first of all, it never occurred to me necessarily at first that they were all related, and it would never have occurred to me that it was because of an environmental toxin. I had no idea, and so it took but that's, like, a perfect example of a
mm.
functional medicine doctor because they are looking at the whole picture and not just and I had gone to other doctors before I talked to her, and none of them had ever asked that question, so they're my heroes.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's really heartening to hear. Um, okay. Is there any other influences other than like functional medicine and the folks Mark Hyman and Will Cole that you had mentioned, or Parsley Health, like functional doctor groups that you admire or look to for wellness um
Yeah, I would
info?
say more around, you know, people who are teaching great things around mental and mental health and how to
Okay.
kind of think how to um, understand the mind. So like there's a book called The Tools. It's written by Phil Stutz and Barry Michaels, and they have another doctor who works with them now, Kristen Sargent,
Hmm.
and it's this beautiful. I read the book years ago and have since gone to their workshops and done different things in groups with them. And the concepts in that book are all around there. It's the first time I ever saw this combination of psychology and spirituality, and
Mm,
it's presented. in a methodology that is um, super easy to use and very um, so they break down these like um, concepts, I guess, or they provide these strategies for dealing with difficult situations in life, whether it's anxiety, whether it's a bad mood, whether it's rage and anger. And
Hmm.
they have these tools that they've designed, these mental tools that you use to move through those emotions and to move. And they're all about enabling people to reach their highest potential. So I love them, and I love
Hmm.
that book,
Okay, awesome. The tools.
the tools.
Okay. Um, any other influences, or we can move on. I feel like we could probably like dig here for quite a
Oh
while,
yeah.
but
I'm like, let me just look at my bookshelf with like, but if I think of anything else that feels worth mentioning,
okay,
I'll let you know.
sounds good. Okay, then getting ready to start wrapping it up. So I love these set of questions. I ask everyone these questions. The first question is, if someone were to, there's a complete newbie in wellness, would be like the first 1 to 3 things a beginner should really look into and do to get momentum to get started?
Hmm, love it. So three things. If I was going to pick three, I would pick an eat, a move, and a breathe. Right. So
Okay.
um, eat. I would start with the first thing I always have clients do is to keep a food log, and to do it for anywhere from 3 to 7 days. And the things that I have them track are what they're eating and at what time of day, as
Mm-hmm.
well as as well as their energy levels throughout the day around those times, and anything to do with their mood around those times. And
Okay.
the reason that I start there is because very often we think we have an idea of what we're eating, but when we actually put pen to paper, we start to see things a little bit more clearly, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what we're actually eating every day. And when you have a log over anywhere from 3 to 7 days, you can start to identify patterns, and you start to notice. I also have them track the hours of sleep from the night before and how much water
Mm-hmm.
they're drinking.
Okay.
And so as you start to track all of that information, you can begin to pick up on patterns like, oh, okay, when I don't get enough sleep the night before, I wind up having sugar cravings the next afternoon. And so that's something I need to look out for. Or
Mm.
on the days that I'm skipping breakfast, I'm overeating at night. And so it can provide a lot of insight just by keeping track of what you're already doing. So that would be one.
Okay.
Let's see,
Cool.
a move one would be, um, you know, tracking your steps is a hugely powerful tool
Mm.
for a lot of people. It's so simple. Most people's watch or phone can do it for them, or you can get a simple, pedometer for like $10 on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you're somebody who is struggling to fit in workouts, or you're struggling to move enough throughout the day, having that, using a step tracker can help you become very aware during the day of when you need to be moving more. And it can be motivating to go outside for that 10-minute walk, to park your car a little bit further, to take the stairs instead of the elevator.
Mm-hmm.
And those steps, no pun intended, like add up over time.
Right.
So it's kind of a good place for people to start. And then finally, with breathe, a lot of people have trouble. Um, Self care is not necessarily high on most people's priority lists, and I
Mm-hmm.
think many people think of it as a nice to have. But the reality is, it's really important that we are taking care. Like, to me, self care is about checking in with your own mental and emotional states, and checking in with your body and yourself, and becoming aware of what you need in a given moment. And so, what I challenge people to do, when I'm first starting working with them, if self care is not something that they're practicing, or if they have some issues with boundaries or with stress, is to assign them homework
Mm-hmm.
of 20 minutes of self care every day. And that can sound like, oh my God, 20 minutes every day. Like, how am I going to do it? But all it is carving out 20 minutes of every day, and where the only thing that you have to do during that time is whatever feels good to you in that moment. So
Mm.
that can be take a nap, that can be go for a walk, it can be call a friend or read a book, it could be watch TV, like whatever it is you need in that moment, like that's your only job. It can't be something that you do for somebody else, or something that's like checking a box of responsibility. And what happens over time as people do that is they build that muscle of understanding that there are benefits that come out of listening to themselves for for 20 minutes and taking just that little bit of time to give themselves what they need kind of fills their own cup.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. In my like coaching practice, I call it wellspring habits. So playing
Yeah,
music, writing, journaling, sitting out and just staring at the trees or playing
yeah,
with
love it.
animals, whatever it is, whatever fills
Yeah,
your cup up, um,
yeah, it's so
for that
important.
lesson. 100%. Okay, so I love. So you have the food log, the tracking steps, the 20 minutes of self care, prescribed. So this next question that I also really love is: so if you're in a wellness journey right now, like generally, are there 1 to 3 things that you look at that tend to bump people up or push them more into their wellness? If they have like a yoga routine, or they do a little bit of working out, that can help them manage stress more, I guess, or all the things
Mhm.
that you teach. More intermediate folks.
Yeah, so, like, how do you what's the next level kind of once you've
Yeah.
um, that's a great question. I mean, it's very individual, right? It depends on
Hmm.
what everyone has kind of their different, problem areas. One thing I would say so one of the things I have clients do when I first start, working with them is do what's called like a you can look it up online. It's like a 360 wheel or the wheel of life. There's like different names for it,
Okay.
but it's this tool and it's just it's like a circle on a piece of paper and then there's all these lines across it like spokes on a wheel. And
Hmm.
then next to each one, is each one represents a different area of your life. So it could be finances, it could be friendships, it could be diet, career, all the different areas of your life. And I have people, and then you on that each spoke is like from 1 to 10, you kind of mark off 10 being like this area of my life is best of the best. One is like I really need a lot of improvement in this area, and you kind of score yourself on there. And what I find like mid to end of a coaching container where
Hmm.
like we've is very often like, okay, we've nailed down like the strategies around, eating and movement and sleep. They've got all these things going, and then what you might notice is that there's there's always like one area that the person or the client is like, it always somehow drops to the bottom of the priority list, and it's like always kind of the last thing they really want to talk about, and it's
Hmm.
sort of like but if you look, it's like one of the areas that they marked as needing improvement right in the beginning, and that can be very telling. And so, like, I guess a question to ask yourself if you're like, "Okay, I feel like I'm doing these things pretty well," is like, what's an area of your life that you know you should be doing something differently, or an area of your health? You know what you should be doing, and yet you're not doing it. So you know it needs to be improved. You have a strategy that you know would probably work, and yet you're not taking action. And I would
Hmm.
spend time there. I would do some reflection. I would do some journaling and ask yourself, what am I getting out of not taking action in
Yeah.
this area? How am I benefiting by, what am I avoiding? What do I fear would happen, if I started looking at this area or creating change here? And very often, it's like there's something deeper. There's something, that they associate with creating change in that area that's actually negative. And so
Hmm.
there's while they want to change, there's some part of them that actually doesn't want to create change in their life. Or they have on some level that they're not thinking about every day, an association with creating change or in that area or with that area, um, that is negative or that holds pain from their past or holds pain from watching a parent go through something.
Hmm.
Um, so that slowing down and spending the time to try and get a little light in there, would be my tip.
Yeah, that's that question. I think can be summed up in is what are you avoiding in your life and
Mhm.
why? Like it's such a powerful coaching tool.
Yeah.
Because like you said, there's usually so much that comes up for folks when
Yeah.
either they don't realize they're avoiding it, but just by saying like, "What are you?" and you're like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
you see
And
on
we
their
have very
face.
good reasons most of the time for doing what we're
Hmm.
doing, including avoiding doing something that we know we should be
Yep.
doing.
Yep.
And so it's like, you know, I think the key there is giving yourself permission to give voice to those parts. Give voice to the part of you that
Hmm.
doesn't wanna create change. Give voice to the parts of the give voice to the part of you that feels afraid or associates
Hmm.
it with past pain, and just, um because until you unearth that and kind of
Yeah.
air it out a bit, it's just gonna sit there and it's gonna keep you from doing the thing, but you're not gonna be necessarily understanding why.
Yep. And you can do all the focus on what you will gain from it, but if you don't know what weight you're carrying in the backpack
Yeah.
as you go
Yeah, exactly.
forward, like you're just going to it's going to be tough to take those steps to move forward.
Yeah,
So
100%.
awesome. Okay, so last question for you. Unless you have any other like tips for intermediate folks, I think that was an
No, let's
assessment and then avoiding, but
yeah. No, let's do it. Let's do the last question.
okay. Do you have any habits that help you keep connected to the work that you're doing, the really good wellness work that's getting put out in the world by you? Do you have any habits that are daily, weekly, or monthly that help you keep on purpose or on mission, or remind you when stuff gets tough that this is important?
Yeah. Um, you know, I think a big part of being a wellness coach is like walking your talk. And, I can't be, you know, supporting my clients in eating healthy meals and making good choices and moving their body and telling them to do all that if I'm not in good fit, doing it myself, which is not to say that, I have to be perfect or do it perfect in the same way that my clients don't. Um, but it feels out of alignment to me, certainly if I'm not living the things that I'm teaching,
Mhm.
my clients to do. So, for me, that's like, you know, um, making food choices in a balanced way. So, not necessarily following a perfect diet, but making choices that I know are going to help me feel my best and take care of my body in the right way. Moving my body consistently, like I really believe that exercise and moving your body is one of the best things you can do for your mental health, as I said before. And so, like, that's a really important part for me, whether it's doing my like actual workouts that I like to do, or just getting out for a walk, getting my steps in. And same thing with with sleep and self care as well.
Okay.
So I would say walking my talk is one. One thing I'm noticing lately too is that as I continue to push myself as a new business owner and
Mhm.
put doing the things that challenge me within that context of creating content and,
Mhm.
being on social media and putting myself out there into the world and all of that, the more I push my own growth edges,
Mm.
the better able I am to encourage my clients to do the same. The more I'm working on my own growth and development, the more inspired I feel around getting other people to do the same thing. So that's important.
Right on. So I'm loving the constantly being reminded that you're the role model for the work that you're putting out there is another way to phrase it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's like if I'm in it with integrity,
mhm.
be saying, here are the things you should be doing to feel good about your health and to take care of yourself. And here's why it's important. Then I have to be doing those things myself too. And again, not perfectly because I wouldn't expect that of anyone. But with consistency and with it as a real part of my identity, I think is
Yeah,
important.
right on. I love that, and I know that um, when since we're the meaningful revolution, so many times people find meaning in service to other people. So it's clients, maybe you have family members. A lot of people have family members. They're also I want to be healthy to role model for my kids. I
Yeah.
think that's a huge source of keeping that purpose. And I just want to honor that too, that integrity. I know from talking about you or talking with you about this topic that shines through in your knowledge and the energy that you've put out. So thank you so much. Real quick, how can people follow up with you or support you or check out your wellness programs out there on the internet?
Thanks. So my website is just my name. It's carriepetri.com. And I have a free mini course that's up there on Eat, Move, and Breathe. That's like a 3-part course you can download for free. Or my Instagram is my name too, just at Carrie Petri.
Awesome.
So those are the 2 places.
Okay, I'll have those in the show notes below the episode. Carrie, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope everyone was taking notes. I have a whole note or a whole page of stuff to come circle back. So again, thank you. It was really quite the honor.
Thank you. This was a blast, and you're a great interviewer. So
Oh,
I'm so
thanks.
glad you're doing this podcast, and thank you for having me on.
Of course, anytime. All right. With that, we'll see you guys in the next episode, the Meaningful Revolution. And until then, go out there and try to add a little bit more meaning to what you're doing in your workouts and see how that changes how you feel with some of the great tips that Carrie gave us today. Okay, guys. Until then, take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Meaningful Revolution podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope you took as much notes as I did, as many notes as I did, in particular about the 3 takeaways that Carrie talked about for helping us self-care more. Because when we can take care of ourselves, we can feel like we are making strides towards the things that are important to us and not burning out, which is, as a high performance coach myself, something we always talk about. How do you beat what's normal in your life without destroying your health and relationships as you go along? So it ties really greatly to the work that we're doing here in the Meaningful Revolution. Again, before I get sidetracked, 3 takeaways were doing that food log for 7 days and marking how you felt energy-wise, sleep-wise, water intake, and whatnot. Tracking your steps every day and just naturally trying to beat what your score was yesterday. And then, doing 20 minutes of self-care, whatever that is for you, reading a book, playing music, writing a song, gardening, whatever lights you up inside. A little bit can go a lot ways, and we often neglect these basic things that I think most people are like, yeah, this is a no-brainer, but get lost when life happens. So if you guys have any other takeaways yourself, please go to community.seanbutler.com or watch the link below this podcast episode, wherever you're listening to it, and join us for free. Share what you learned. If you want to discuss anything or you aren't clear on something, definitely let us know. We can cheer you on. We can, help suss it out for you and really just build a community around adding a little bit more meaning to our lives every day, connecting with people, and really progressing our lives. So hope you join us there. Again, the link's below this episode, or go to community.seanbutler.com, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.